Welcome to the Antisocial Podcast. I won't tell you what day it is because I can't remember what date it is. Because I'm sweating so much. I'm in my little office at my house. I have no air conditioning and I swear it's 40 degrees in this room. And I've just spent the last hour and a half talking to the guest of this week's episode, which I'll get to in a moment. But I am feeling like I'm about to hallucinate and I almost feel drunk with borderline heat stroke. So I won't spend too much time talking, but naturally I don't want to have any fans on or doors open because you just get a lot of background noise. Anyway, thank you so much for tuning in, as always. Before we get started, thank you so much for those that have voted for the podcast on the Castaway Awards website, the Australian Podcast Awards. If you haven't done so yet, you can go to castawayawards.com.au and go to the popular vote section and you can vote for your favourite Australian podcast. And even if I'm not your favourite Australian podcast, you can vote for me anyway because I think you can vote for more than one podcast. Some friends that are on there include Screws and Co. Breakfast Show and Pod Kembler, so definitely give them a vote as well. They definitely deserve it. Hopefully it will lead to a good outcome and I'll be the winner. But so far there's a few podcasts that are definitely leading the charge, but any vote will be definitely worth it. And it brings an extra bit of exposure to this podcast with more listeners. So it all helps. So thank you so much for those people that are taking the time to do a vote. So castawayawards.com.au. If you are interested in any of the show notes from this episode or any of the other previous episodes, you can go to andysocial.net. I try to put links up for most things that we talk about in the episodes and main resources to contact the people that I speak to. There's also ways to support them as well. So if it's a musician, there'll be links to their web stores and online stores and blah, blah, blah. But most people, I think the best thing is just to reach out and say hello and just let them know what you thought of the episode of the podcast itself. As I always ramble on about, these people are taking time out of their busy day-to-day lives to have a chat to me about all sorts of things, and I love to try and repay them as much as possible with giving them a tiny little bit of exposure. Most of these people don't need it, and I'm just a tiny little podcast, but it all helps, and I know that a few of you do reach out and say hello to some of the guests that I've had on previously, and I know that sometimes can have a bigger impact than the number of listeners and exposure that the podcast may bring. So thank you so much for those people that have been doing so. If you do want to support this podcast, in addition to voting for it on the Castaway Awards, you can like, share, comment, heart, whatever the social media functions are on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I'm sure there's a million other, Tumblr, there's a million different places. All these things help the podcast. It helps it reach more people, exposes to more people and blah, blah, blah. You know how it works. So that's a very easy thing to do. And especially with a stupid platform like Facebook where if nobody's liking something or interacting with it, Facebook just makes sure that post remains hidden so no one can view it in their news feed. So if you do see it pop up in your news feed as you're scrolling through on your day-to-day happenings, just flick a quick like on there because it will give it a little tiny boost to reach more people. It's very, very good for me. If you want to do something a little bit more, you can go to the Amazon portal on my website, andysocial.net. If you are a regular Amazon shopper, this link is a unique link that is linked to myself. And what it does is when you buy something from Amazon, as per normal, I get a small percentage of what you buy. And it's a very, very, very tiny amount of money, but it does add up when a number of people are doing it. Thank you very much to those people. And that money does help go towards my monthly or regular expenses to maintain the podcast, whether it be gear, uploading, hosting, some travel here and there, whatever it might be, it all sort of adds up, and it's a labour of love. And I'm certainly not here to make any money or any profit, but it's a cool little thing to get a little bit of money back that helps cover some of the costs anyway that makes this podcast exist. So that's another way of doing it. So you can do it at andysocial.net. You can find the link there, or you can be very smart. Go to the website once, do a right click on the link, and then you can save it to your bookmarks in your phone or on your desktop browser, favorites bar, or whatever you call it. Enough of that. This week's guest is a very interesting guest, a little bit left field for me because he's come from a recommendation from a good friend, and this is the first time I've actually spoken to him, and I had a number of questions that have been passed on to me and different interesting things about this person. So you will find that this episode is a little bit all over the place. It's definitely a conversation more so than an interview, so to speak, which I kind of like because we sort of just go with the flow and see where it takes us. So there's no real structure to this. There's a lot of interesting things that that this week's guest has been involved with and has travelled to a number of different places around the globe and had a number of different and interesting experiences. So this week's guest is a guy by the name of Nathan Sidoti. I probably butchered his surname. Sorry, Nath. And Nathan does AV work at the moment, but has a long history in doing AV and sound engineering, and has been heavily involved in that sort of aspect of the industry, but involved in music and whatnot. He's traveled the world. He's lived in a number of different places. He's worked and associated with a number of weird and wonderful people, which he touches on a few of them in this episode. And this was really interesting. It was a bit slow getting started, and we had a quick interruption to begin with. But once we got into it and started talking about some of the things about various places that he's lived in, such as Shanghai and Bali and Honduras. Did I say that right? Probably not. And Copenhagen as well. And once we started talking about a lot of that, we really sort of uncovered a lot of cool stories and experiences that Nath's had over the years. And my big takeaway from this, and he even pointed it out earlier on in the piece of the conversation, that he's not somebody that is spending his money on material possessions. He's always spending money on experiences, and this is something that I'm personally going through at the moment, decluttering my life and not finding the same thrill in acquiring objects and things like that. And I'd much rather spend my money on meeting people and having experiences and getting out there and whatnot. So this really sort of struck something with me, and I got quite excited when he mentioned this. And in a way, he was almost forced to have this way of thinking by traveling so much. So there's a lot of cool perspectives that he has, and at one point he mentions his battles that he has when he looks at people that have a bit more of a stable life and have spent a little bit more time pursuing their careers and whatnot. And I think it's all about perspective, and as he said, the grass is always greener on the other side. And I think when it all boils down to it, the experiences that you have, the people that you meet, and the things that you learn along the way are far more valuable than acquiring assets or acquiring objects and material possessions and whatnot. And there's always exceptions to the rule, but I think when it all boils down to it, I think Nate's definitely on the right track and has the right idea when it comes to enjoying life. So I'm so sorry. Enough of this. I'm talking way too much. So enjoy this episode with Nath, and I'll have a few more comments at the end of the episode to wrap it up. Thanks, guys. I guess maybe just for people that don't know who you are, I mean, you don't have to say who you are and what you do, but I guess, what are you up to these days? What's your main sort of I was going to say time waster. It's not the right thing to say, but what's the thing that's taking up most of your time at the moment?
I guess basically work, like with most people. I guess, the realisation of coming back to Sydney is, you asked me 6-8 months, or you asked me a year ago whether I'd end up back in Sydney. I'd probably say no way, but all of a sudden I've ended up back in Sydney, so it's just sort of dealing with getting my head around being back in Sydney, and yeah, thing that sort of I get a bit of a time waster for me, and something that I've bought that which is a bit of a midlife crisis, and something I wanted to do for a long time is I bought myself an old Holden.
Oh yeah, nice. Doing it up.
Yeah, so I sort of sneak in the garage every now and then and try and get a bit of time on that. It's an old 67 HR Holden.
Nice.
It's in pretty good nick, but I've done a few motorbikes before, but I've always wanted to do a car. So yeah, I bought a car, and
Does that link into what you said the other day about giving yourself a resolution for this year of staying away from your phone on the weekends so you can dedicate time to doing stuff like that?
No, it's just something that I've just been aware of, and it's something I noticed, with my wife too. She's very good at sort of, if you sit at the dinner table, she won't bring the phone out. If people around, she doesn't bring the phone out. But I noticed that I'm somebody that I wouldn't say I'm a nutter with the phone, but I'm quite comfortable just to sit at home with a laptop while watching TV.
Yeah.
And not being on Facebook, but just reading about stuff. Like a lot of searching about the car and a lot of learning about the car. And then I sort of turn to Joyce and go, that's, even though we're just watching TV, you still don't have your attention space in that time at the moment of time, So I'm just trying to respect that a little bit more. And on the weekends when I'm here with her, I'm just trying not to, reply to every text that you get straight away, and trying to keep off the work emails and stuff like that unless they're important. So
yeah. No, I hear you. It's props to you, because it's not an easy thing to do, and I think until you actually attempt to try and stay away from the phone that you realise just how much, well, laptop as well, but you just realise how much time you actually do spend each day or each week mucking around with, even whether it be work or personal or anything like that, just being stuck to a screen.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm quite lucky. I don't sit right. My old job in Shanghai is to sit a little bit more in front of the screen, but at the moment I don't so much, so it's not too bad. But when people can work all day in front of the screen and come home and sit in front of their laptop or their phone, and I mean, it's just unfortunate, I guess. I mean, a lot of my time spent like learning stuff and that. I can't just pick up a book and do it. So whether it's any worse than a book, I'm not sure, but it's just more about just having a bit more attention, focus on the people around you rather than what's happening, on the other side of the internet.
No, that's it. I'm still working on that. I'm a work in progress.
It's
not easy.
But no, not at all.
Do you do at the moment? You're sort of doing AV sound engineering. What's the main sort of occupation that you're up to at the moment?
I work as an audio visual install technician.
Okay.
So I've done production and sound engineering, previously, and I did a bit of it when I sort of met Reese, and on the side, more of a hobby. I wasn't really getting paid for it in Shanghai.
Yeah.
But I mainly do the install stuff, and it's mainly like corporate integration, like, when you go to a boardroom and there's projectors and high-end control systems and speakers in ceilings. And I used to do more pubs and nightclubs. Nowadays, all the money's in integration through offices and corporate buildings. This week I've worked in a 150-year-old courtroom down in Picton, and last week when I couldn't talk to you, I was working in the jail at Berrimah, and so there's good variety. I
guess as the rest of the world catches up to technology, someone's got to be there to make sure that they understand it and obviously have it installed and they're ready to go.
Exactly, and it's a bit of a boom at the moment. All this video conferencing, and again, what we're talking about with the internet stuff. Everybody wants to be on the internet, so everybody wants access straight away, and everyone's doing business over video conferencing rather than, it's quite interesting. We can install one TV screen and a camera, and it can cost anywhere to $50,000-$60,000 just to buy it. But then the CEO turns around and goes, well, that's it's half a year's flight for a couple of my staff to fly to Melbourne to do a meeting when I can just do it via video conferencing now. So it all adds up.
That's it. Justifies the cost. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
A good industry to be in at the moment. Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting. But it's just mainly to step away, I guess, from the sound engineering, just because mainly the hours, I work 9 to 5, or not 9 to 5, but, tradie hours, Monday to Friday, as opposed to late Thursday nights and late Saturday nights when gigs are on, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially sort of coming from a music background myself. I mean, I do the 9 to 5 grind, but I'm also playing over the years and whatnot. So I mean, pretty much. From a Thursday night right up until a Sunday night, you're out of action. I mean, I could think of worse things to do with your time, but
totally.
But if you've got other things in life as well, it can certainly take up a lot of time.
Yeah, totally.
Well, one thing I was going to say is with your sound engineering that you've done in the past, I was told that you've done some pretty interesting stuff in the past. Apparently, you did some early tours with the Wiggles.
Yeah, that was just around New South Wales and a few shows.
Yeah, right.
That was just at the very. I used to work for a guy who was quite prominent in the theatre industry, like being a sound engineer for theatre. So that was sort of how I got into the industry. I worked with him for the first 6 months, kind of thing, for free, and then I worked with him for about 5 years. And one of those tours was just doing a show with the Wiggles when I was first sort of starting up. And again, Reece sounds more glamorous than it actually was. It's like, dude, it was just a gig, like it wasn't really. And he's like, it's the Wiggles. But it was kind of quite cool. I was actually doing universities and stuff when I was sort of, I don't know, just getting their name out and about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I assume that, as you said, like getting a foot in the door to begin with doing the theatre stuff and doing it for free, it's sort of like, I guess, sort of an informal internship in a way to sort of get your foot in the door, I guess.
Yeah, basically, I remember in the old days, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and that sounded good, so I just did a whole lot of emails out to a whole lot of people, and then, I just said, look, I'm prepared to work for free with you,
Oh, so that's even better, because you didn't even like know anyone beforehand. You pretty much like more or less the cold call version of email. You mentioned before you were in Shanghai for a while there. How long were you in Shanghai for?
6 years.
Oh, shit. Okay, so that's a long time. And,
yeah.
And you were doing work for, was it the World Expo over there?
I went over for a contract for World Expo for a year and a half. That was a year and a half contract.
Yeah.
And I think within sort of 3 months, I knew I loved it and wanted to stay after the contract. And then I worked for another audio-visual company over there and worked in as a visual, sort of as what would you call it? In operations.
Right.
For an audio-visual company, yeah.
Yeah, cool. What, you just love China that much? Love Shanghai that much that you wanted to stay, or was it more the work that was, or a combination of everything?
Definitely wasn't the work. It was more, I don't know, you probably heard, it's a bit of a love-hate relationship there, but it's just the excitement of it. It's just, again, when I was sort of talking about dealing with Sydney, it's just trying to deal with the boredom of being here and the routine and the monotony of it.
Yeah.
I've been somewhere that you know so well, but then Shanghai, it was just such an exciting place to be, and then through Reece, I sort of fell into the music scene and, just met some awesome people. And by the end of it was more my friends and my social life that was keeping me there than really where I was.
Yeah.
By the end of it, I wasn't even using Shanghai for Shanghai. And that was kind of why I left. It was like, well, why am I still here? I'm not even using this city for what it's worth,
Yeah,
so
gotcha. You'd almost exhausted what you needed from it at the time.
Yeah, exactly. It just started becoming a familiar place again. And I had a bit of a dream to open a bar in Indonesia, and I'd saved enough money and that was time to do it. So I went to Indonesia to open a bar and stayed there for a year in Bali and met my lovely wife, and so we ended up back here.
It's incredible. Can you speak Mandarin?
No, enough to get me around.
Yeah.
Enough to like get in a taxi, enough to order food, enough to,
Yeah, just the basics.
Sort of, that's just a basic sort of thing, But no, I wouldn't say I can speak Mandarin.
Yeah. Oh, it's incredible. It's one place I haven't been to China yet, and I've always wanted to go, and it seems to be a common thing that people say that have either lived there or have been there quite a few times. There's just this chaotic place. It's just you don't know what to expect, and there's always something happening. It's just, and I guess the sheer size of population as well is, for someone that's probably not used to it, could be quite overwhelming to begin with.
Yeah, and just the people. I don't know, like I never sort of call myself a racist person. I never feel that it's a racist comment to make, but I've travelled, 30, 40 odd countries and lived in sort of 4 other countries, but Chinese are just a completely different generation, sort of different people. They're just completely different. They're just in their own mindset, their own world, and it's hard to put a finger on, but it's really entertaining and it's really frustrating at the same time. As I sort of said, you might walk out of the day and come home totally aggravated or totally excited. It always just sort of invoked a feeling within you, whereas here I just come home not bored, but it's just very mundane and quite the same,
Yeah.
So it's just,
I remember someone telling me ages ago, I don't know whether this is a myth or not, but one of the things that it might be in certain areas of China more so than just China in general, but when you're meeting someone for the first time, it's, one of the things that you sort of ask, like, how we would meet meet each other and go, oh, what are you up to? Like, what do you do for a job or whatever? They would ask you how much money you earn just to try and gauge.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, totally. You'd be in a taxi. He's like, hello, you're foreigner. What do you do? What do you do in Shanghai? How much you earn? How much your rent? You know? Oh, they're very, yeah. And it's a very common thing, too, in the workplace for all the staff. Because I used to manage about 30-odd boys.
Yeah.
And they, and then I had a manager above me, and he'd always get frustrated at all the boys complaining to me about their salary. It's like, yeah, it's common for them to sit around at lunchtime and talk about their salary and how much they earned and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, oh, they're not allowed to. I was like, you can't change a culture because that's what we do in the West and in England. You can't come over here and tell them, you just got to pay them fairly.
Yeah, that's true.
You can't get around it by sort of saying, I'm going to pay him this and him that, and then hopefully they don't talk about it. You just got to pay them both the right amount and what they're worth.
There you go. Yeah, just do the right thing.
yeah, exactly.
It's incredible. Yeah, it's one of those places that it's just, it seems, I mean, I've been to Japan 6 or 7 times over the years and just playing and visiting and whatnot. And Japan, I think, is probably the closest thing that I can compare to China, but at the same time appears to be polar opposites in so many ways as well. But
yeah, totally.
Japan seems so insular and so closed off from the rest of the world in so many ways, and they've got their own thing, and they're very sort of, they take care of their own, and you go in there and you feel like you're on another planet. It's just incredible. And I assume that China is similar, but in vastly different ways altogether, of course. Yeah,
totally. I've got a couple of friends from Shanghai that have lived in both countries for an extensive amount of times, and they both say exactly the same sort of thing. They're both very unique and both very similar while being polar opposites at the same time, and it's mainly due to the culture and the way the people are. They're just so completely different, Whereas the Japanese are so dedicated to their company and the way they work, whereas Chinese are just so lazy and, blasé about their job and would do the, shittiest job as long as it's the least amount of effort to get anything done. And the Chinese are so polite and will look at you going, yes, sir, how are you, sir? Whereas the Chinese would just sort of say to you, God, you look fat today, or don't wear that, you look stupid. And it's just their culture, it's just the way they are, And I think I don't think I could ever live in Japan for that reason. I just feel it's quite fake. A few times I've been there and they sort of, the little bow and how are you, sir, and, yes, sir, no, sir kind of thing. I kind of like the Chinese way. They just sort of slam the money on the counter and go, can't be fucked saying hello. Why should I say hello?
I don't need to. I'm here for a reason.
Where's it going to get me if I say hello? Here's your $2 change from your Coca-Cola you just bought. See you later.
Just get to the point. That's it.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, exactly.
I think that would do wonders for my ego being in China, because I would very quickly have to sort of be a sink or swim mentality. I'd get my ego broken straight away, but I'd be able to, hopefully overcome it very quickly. But one thing that I hate in Australia, and I've seen it in other parts of the world, is that especially in Western culture anyway, that offers small talk. And I'm sure you see it sort of just doing what you do now on a day-to-day basis, it's like, it's Monday again, or it's hump day, or it's Friday. Thank God it's Friday. Or, hey, how you going? And you don't answer the question. You just you say the same question to the other person as you're walking by. No one actually cares how you're going and whatnot.
Totally.
And from what you're saying with the Chinese, like, you just don't have that small talk. It's just, if I don't need to talk to you, I'm not going to talk to you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I'd love that. I'd absolutely love that. You mentioned Bali, so you're there for 12 months, and you opened up your own bar there?
No, I wanted to. I went to go over there. Yeah. My parents have lived over there for about 3 or 4 years, and they have a lovely place. So while I was in China, I was going back and forward. And even before I'd sort of got my Chinese contract, I went over there to have a look at the place. And so after Shanghai, and I'd saved a decent amount of money, I went over there and stayed with my parents, because my mum was actually a cook as well. She's owned bars, or she's owned restaurants and cafes, and my dad used to sell fruit and vegetables for a living, so it was, ideal to have them there while I was starting, for them to help me out and
absolutely
have a place to stay until the business, got off the ground, and, get their input and stuff like that. And they've been going there back and forth for 30, 40 years kind of thing. So
yeah, wow.
It was a perfect place to do it. But yeah, I looked at, God, seriously, I probably looked at about a half a dozen places and looked at about 20 other places, just, walking in and looking on the outside, and it just wasn't possible. And, I'd sort of met my girlfriend, or my wife at the time, who worked in hospitality all her life as well, and she was actually on holidays in Bali. She's from West Sumatra,
And she'd never really done the legal side of things with it, but she was helping me out quite a bit, trying to find a place and get the legalities of, businesses and talking to business owners and stuff. And it was just a mindfuck how hard it was. I always say, trying to do business in China is like 100 times easier than it would be to do in Indonesia.
Yeah, right. Is it more because it's just so use the word again, chaotic, or just informal at the way they approach things? It's not as structured.
Just informal. It's just almost. It's what we see as corrupt is what they see as every day.
Yeah,
basically,
gotcha.
It's like you pay him this much and you pay him that much, and this was that much, and just the complete lack of information was just really difficult to deal with. Like you'd sort of, and it's not just on a level of business. It's like getting your visas, getting your driver's license, buying a house, everything. It can change from month to month what the laws are, Like while I was there, the visa laws changed 4 or 5 times for foreigners. 1 month, a foreigner can't get a business visa unless he can speak Bahasa. And then the next one was, they would change a month later to you can't get a business visa until he owns a business with such and such amount of money. And so you'd walk in a lawyer's office and one lawyer would tell you this, another lawyer would tell you that, another, notary would tell you this, another person would tell you that. It's just like, fuck, I just want to get some information, And I typically wasn't going to do it because I was using all my money that I'd saved. I wasn't going to touch any place unless I knew it was 100% legal.
Yeah, yeah.
And a lot of places didn't even have liquor licenses. And like, you just pay the policeman off once a month when he comes around. It's normal. Everybody does it in this street. And I'm just like, I'm not going to do it. One day the government could turn around and go around and close every place that doesn't have a liquor license.
You need a lot of patience to
totally.
do business over there. It's
totally.
Just, it seems. I guess it's like anywhere really. It's another world altogether, especially with the way that everything's sort of, especially here in Australia. And I guess we've sort of taken a page out of America's book, or North America's book, with laws and licenses and all sorts of fees and admin fees and all sorts of stuff that you have to pay, and all these loopholes that you have to jump through. And sometimes it's good to have a lot of that stuff there for a bit of reliability and structure and whatnot. But
exactly.
It's sort of like the other end of the spectrum as far as extremes concerned.
Yeah, exactly. And it's all about who you know and who you can pay off and who you can And like for instance, my parents had good friends over there that owned a restaurant for 12 years. Foreign man, local lady. One day the police just walk in, someone to see all your papers. Looked through all their papers, went, no, this is not right. And they had all their papers right for a long time. They've been trading for a long time, getting them renewed and stuff. And they said, no, we have to shut you down. Sorry, your papers aren't in place. And all it basically came down to, once I'd moved out, the place got knocked down a month later and someone else rebuilt there. It's just about who knew somebody that, I'll give you whatever, $50,000 to go get them shut down. I want that location. Okay, cool.
Nothing's guaranteed.
Yeah, exactly. So I just wasn't prepared, and I wasn't prepared to put money in Invest ID that's like that, and pay for staff and put money towards the government and pay taxes and all that sort of shit when you're treated like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you, despite, I guess, those bad experiences with trying to get a business up and running, is Indonesia or Bali in particular a place that you would go back to and live there permanently at all? Especially,
I'd love to. Yeah, I'd love to. I mean, if I had the money, I'd love to do it full time and just relax there. But trying to earn money there would be quite difficult. I mean, a lot of the expats, especially Perth expats, work 5 days on, 5 days off, and then they go to Bali. I mean, I wouldn't like to do that traveling back and forth, but if I could somehow earn a living outside of the country and then just live there, it'd be wonderful. There's a lot of people, I think, especially Bali, to them is like, I don't know, have you been to Bali?
No, I never have actually. But I've got a lot of friends in Perth, just as you mentioned, that I was absolutely blown away. I didn't realize how close it was to Perth. And as you said,
it's like an hour and a half.
Yeah, and people will do the hop, skip, and a jump like every few days or every couple of weeks and just go up there. And we're going to go up for a weekend because you get cheap flights and whatever. So it's incredible. So I'd like to go there one day, but I haven't been there yet.
Yeah, a lot of people. I mean, it's a beautiful place. A lot of people refer it to Kuta and the party scene and all the nightclub and stuff, which is great that it's there because it keeps all those sort of people away from where we were living, which is nice, beautiful, quiet, serene street. It's just gorgeous, it's really mellow, nice beaches, we had a lovely house, and we used to go on motorbike treks up through the mountains, and it's an awesome place, wonderful place.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that's sort of, well, it hasn't put me off, but hasn't put Bali up high on my list of places to get to like next, because I've just, I guess the stereotypes of the culture put around it, with a lot of Aussies go over there. It's a cheap holiday, and just go and get loose and have a pretty crazy time over there. And it's just, I mean, maybe 10 years ago it might have been a bit more of my liking, but
when you're a bit younger.
Yeah,
I mean, it's really ugly. Like, you go into those areas. We used to go to one bar that was in that area just to go see hardcore bands and sort of local punk bands and stuff, and it's around that sort of bar district. And at night time, it's just ugly. It's just sort of show some respect for the local people, show some respect for yourselves. You wouldn't be doing this down the street of your local, so why do it there? I mean, you get that everywhere. I guess you get it in places in Thailand.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've seen that in parts of Europe. I mean, just recently, I got married last year, a few months ago, almost 6 months ago, and we went to Europe for about a month, and we were in Prague for about almost 2 months. We based ourselves out of Prague and sort of just did a bit of exploring around the place. But Prague's seems to be the Bali for Brits. It's a cheap flight over, and it's costs of hotels and alcohol and food and everything's pretty cheap. And they rock up Friday afternoon. They're just loose for the whole weekend, and then by either Sunday night or Monday morning, the place is a ghost town as far as the Brits are concerned. And it was just incredible.
Yeah.
It was just, and they just ripped the place apart. It was just absolutely insane. And I just thought, this must be, whether it's exactly the same or not, but this must be something like what the Aussies do when they go to Bali and just rage.
Yeah.
I
mean, a lot of the Indonesians sort of look down at a lot of the Europeans because they're a lot pickier, and they sort of, let's say the Australians are friendly and nice and don't barter and don't get aggressive and stuff like that. But they, you just have this, as soon as you say you're an Australian, they just have this perception of you straight away. Of, you drink lots of beer and sit in the pub from 12 o'clock watching the football and have no desire to know the culture. And, it's sort of a little bit unfortunate that, there's a culture too about, I used to have an Indonesian wife, and they're sort of like, oh, right, okay. And it's like, no, she didn't work in a bar beforehand, blah, blah, blah. She's a good girl. She never drank before, blah, 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 all that sort of stuff. And so it's just, anyway, people think what they want to think.
Oh, that's it. I mean, if you're worried about that, then you probably wouldn't get anything done. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned that you've lived in a few other places around the world. What I think was Denmark one of them?
Yeah, I lived in Copenhagen for a year, so that's about as much as I've seen of Europe.
Yeah.
I moved. So firstly, I lived in Honduras. I lived in a small island in the Caribbean in Honduras, which was a very random trip. And again, if you told me that was going to happen, I would never have thought so. And then from there, I met a Danish girl, and from there I moved to Copenhagen and went there with her for a year. And again, I had no desire or no idea what Copenhagen would be like, and ended up living in Copenhagen for a year.
That's incredible. How on earth did you get to Honduras in the first place? I'm jumping all over the place, but as soon as you mentioned that, I went, oh, well, okay.
No, I went to go live in Mexico.
Yeah.
So I went to go again after a lovely feline, after another girl. So I met her in Australia, and I was just sort of like, okay, she's going back to Mexico. And I've always really wanted to live out of Sydney for as long as I can remember. Never really had the reason why. I've always travelled, and I thought it would be great to live out of somewhere. And she was, I guess, more of an excuse. Like, I sort of tried to make that relationship work to, we were never really into each other, and then that sort of lasted a day and a half when I was in Mexico. Pretty much when I landed and her at the airport, I realised it wasn't going to work. And then I was just sitting in a bar in Mexico City, and I'd met a guy that just come back from Honduras and told me about this small little island that was great for diving. And I just sort of, a couple of years prior to that, got my dive license. Went, I'll go down there. And then I ended up, from the first night that I got on the island, I found a job in a restaurant, found a job in a dive school, and found a place to live. And I just ended up staying there for a year.
It's pretty incredible, because That scenario just reminded me. I don't know if you've ever heard of like the French Legion, the special forces army unit, and what they do is they drop these guys into like Germany or whatever. This is part of their training with no money, no resources whatsoever, and they say basically get back to France, whichever way you
Yeah,
can.
right.
So they'll go to wherever they'll drop in a field somewhere, random village. They'll walk into the village. They've all got to split up, and they've got to try and find a way to convince someone to give them a lift somewhere. They have to try and find somewhere to earn some money, and it's really like the pressure's on for them to be resourceful and creative with nothing. So when you just said that, then I'm thinking, oh, it's almost like the equivalent of French Legion, just dropping into Honduras.
The backpack version.
Yeah, that's it. But that's something. Oh, for me, it's just such a foreign concept of like I'm far too organized sometimes. I'll plan things in advance to make sure, like I always have the flexibility if something doesn't go right that, I'll adjust and whatnot. But to be able to sort of just go get a bit of a sniff of an idea and then just go down there. And as you said, like within that first day or night, you've already hooked up work and you've got some things moving straight away. That's such a cool thing to hear at least from my point of view, because it's just such a weird concept for me to take in.
I guess I don't know. I've just always been a hard worker, and I've always known. And I guess the two things that I've only ever done in my life is working in restaurants and working in audiovisual is very good for traveling.
Yeah.
I mean, you can always work in setting up, on tours, or you can always work, mixing bands in nightclubs or bars, or working in bars and stuff like that, or working as a cook.
Yep.
Or a manager. So it kind of worked for me, and I just sort of walked into a restaurant, and I mean, the girl today is still one of my best friends that I asked over the counter. This is sort of 9.5 years ago, where she's now owns a guest house in Colombia, and we still keep in contact,
Yeah.
And it just sort of walked into the restaurant and just said, hey, by the way, I've just sort of come to the island, I'm looking for work. And she just pointed down there. And I went, well, sorry, I'm looking for a house to stay. And she pointed to the girl down there and see that Spanish girl down there, she's looking for someone. Cool. Hey, Goretti, blah, blah, blah. And the place ended up being wonderful. I lived with her for a year. And then, I ended up managing the kitchen at night while this French-Canadian girl that I asked that night managed the bar. And we just became really good friends and ran one of the most popular sort of tourist restaurants in the island. It's a small island, only about 2.5 kilometres long. Like, it's tiny.
Yeah,
You can
wow.
walk around the thing in about 40 minutes. And there's no cars on the island, just dirt roads, about 6 or 8 dive schools, about 4 bars.
And so was it a big tourist
10
destination?
It's a big tourist destination, mainly because it's the cheapest place. There's a place in Thailand called Koh Tao, and this place are the 2 cheapest places that you can get your dive license.
Gotcha.
So basically it's very big for Europeans going through South or Central America to go there and get the dive license. So they'd come over, get the dive license, dive 3 or 4 times, and that's probably the only time they ever dive in their life. But a lot of people that used to come would end up staying, go for a week and end up staying for 10 days.
Yeah.
And you probably talk to a majority of the people, 50, 60% of the people that lived there as an expat who ended up working the dive school would come over I'm going to go over for a couple of weeks and dive, and then end up just staying, for a year or 2 or, I don't think there's many people that sort of plan to go, I'm going to go pack everything up and go live on Utila. It's just one of those places you fall in love with,
Yeah. Is there similarities between, I guess, so the local culture there and the local culture in Indonesia as far as that, that sort of laid back sort of attitude where sort of it's very loose as far as structure and not so much laws, but, rules and things like that, and anything can go. Was it that sort of feeling there at all?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I didn't really, you don't really have much contact with the locals. The only contacts I really had with the locals were the couple of girls that were running the kitchen, the ladies that I used to manage in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And they couldn't speak any English and I couldn't speak much Spanish. And then our boat captain and a couple of staff at the dive school.
Gotcha.
And it's just island folk. Like they're all very uneducated. They sort of grew up there all their life. But Honduras is one of the sort of most dangerous countries in the world. It has the highest murder rate per capita in the world, and it's incredibly dangerous. The capital city at night time's
really dangerous. And that sort of extended across to the country, across to the island as well. And there's a bit of a gangster sort of attitude, Quite often you'd see if any local gave any shit, like you wouldn't dare try and chat up a local girl unless, you're familiar with the family, or you wouldn't be a Westerner sort of just walking in and within a few days go try and chat up a local girl, because I'd seen a couple of times where, the guys would get out and just beat the living shit out of them in the middle of the bar. And, even though the bar was owned by the Westerner, and even though there's a whole lot of Westerners that lived there, no one would step in.
Yeah, right. Wow.
Because it's just that culture of, and they do it amongst themselves as well. They're just very rough,
Yeah, incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible.
It's just a lot of sort of street culture on the middle of an island. It's kind of quite funny.
And as you said, like you didn't interact a great deal with the locals. Was it because that there was sort of a segregation between the expats and the locals, and just because of that, the cultural difference or something like that?
Just a cultural difference, and there's just sort of no real need to. It's not.
Yeah.
You just didn't have anything really in common with them. It wasn't that kind of where you could sit down, and I guess there wasn't that much exposure. Like they lived in the slums of the island. Like I was quite good friends with my boat captain. A couple of times I'd go to his family's dinner and stuff like that, and they literally lived in a corrugated iron roof with dirt floors and, sort of milk crates and stuff sitting around as, furniture and so forth like that. Why we're coming over there and spending probably their year's salary one night in the bar, and they'd sort of look at that. And they had their own bar at night, so there was one place up the hill that, only the locals would go to, and if you were a foreigner, you could go there, but you wouldn't dare try and walk around and, hey, mate, how you going? How you been? You live here or anything? Or just sort of you just leave them to them, and we're over this side, you're over that side,
Just mind your own business more.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And they didn't mind, they knew that if there was no foreigners, they wouldn't have an income, so they just treated you that way kind of thing,
Yeah, gotcha. And so you came across a Danish girl there and then followed her to probably what would be the complete opposite of Honduras being Denmark, which is
basically,
one of the most expensive cities I've ever been to.
Yeah, well, so she left, and about 3 months after, I was like, I don't want to go back to Sydney. I just sort of had enough of the island, or I sort of almost felt guilty with the island. I was 33 or something, and just like literally I was waking up 7 o'clock, diving till midday, then, taking people diving till midday, and then in the afternoon I'd go on my own sun dive and then just be in the bar or smoking weed or whatever, just doing nothing.
Yeah.
And then I only worked in the restaurants 3 nights a week, and, it's just sort of like, all right, I've got to do something. Enough of this is for a year. And she's like, well, come to Denmark. And again, I literally landed in Denmark with about $200 in my pocket and went, all right, here we go. And again, not research, and that's why I didn't get to see Europe, because I was just under the assumption of, okay, every 3 months I'll leave Denmark and go across to Germany and update my part, get a new visa.
Yeah.
So I didn't know anything about the Chechen agreement and about visas throughout, Europe and stuff like that. So I just kind of got stuck in Denmark, in Copenhagen, because by the time I'd earned enough money to travel, I'd already had my 3 months up.
Yeah, gotcha.
And so I couldn't travel anywhere, and if I left Denmark, I couldn't get back in. So
unfortunately, I didn't get to see Europe while I was there, and I'm not quite sure whether I can or not, because I guess I can now, because apparently if you overstay your visa, they can ban you for coming from 7 years.
Oh, right. Wow.
Yeah. So they didn't say anything when I left, but, apparently they don't have to.
No.
But it's been 7 years now, so
you may be okay now. Potentially.
Yeah. Not that I plan to go anytime soon, but anyway.
No. But what was I guess I've only been in Copenhagen for literally hours. Like I haven't been there for a long period of time, but just going from other parts of Europe and working out the cost of everyday items and whatnot, and then getting into Copenhagen and just going, oh, okay, everything's like double or 3 times the price of anywhere else.
Yeah,
it's incredible how expensive things were. Did you have? I mean, especially rocking up there with $200. Did you find it was difficult to sort of get started, or wasn't too bad?
Well, I was lucky because I had her place to stay at, so I was staying with her.
Yeah,
and again, within about 10 days, I had a job, so it wasn't too bad, and I was just getting paid cash in hand.
Okay, yeah.
And I was working in a restaurant, so I was getting, lunches and that there and stuff like that, and sort of drinking there afterwards and so forth. But it was hard to get by. Like, I wasn't living luxurious or anything. We were living, me, her, and another girl in a small apartment, and she was only a student at the time. And I remember trying to go out and get a bicycle because, as you know, everyone rides bikes there, and going, shit, they're expensive. So I just found one on the side of the road and rebuilt it myself, and stuff like that. And I wasn't certainly shopping or anything like. I'm generally not a person that consumes. I generally spend all my money on, even today, just going out to nice meals or traveling or nights out. So I didn't really have to buy anything. It was just more about, just having a few beers with friends and having nice meals out or cooking for friends and,
Well, I guess if you sort of already by that stage got a bit of a track record for getting out there and staying in places for, smaller periods of time in the grand scheme of things, you probably already, once you're in Denmark, sort of thinking, oh, well, where's the next place going to be at some stage? I've got to move. I've got to keep moving. So there's no point accumulating things or spending a lot of money on material items.
Exactly. So I think, it's different. Obviously, being in Shanghai, I went with one backpack and came back with, boxes upon boxes of stuff. And I think when I moved to Denmark, I left with less stuff than I sort of landed with, No, it was a good, nice place. It was good. It was a romantic and beautiful city, but it's somewhere I certainly wouldn't. I feel really no desire to go back there and travel at all. Like, yes, Shanghai I'd like to. Yes, Honduras I'd like to. But Denmark, I think I've seen everything, and there's nothing there that really appeals to me again. And I don't think I could ever live there again. It's not slow, but it's very small.
Yeah.
And there's not really that much going on there.
And do you think it's, I mean, obviously European cities are very different to what we've got here in Australia, but obviously still very westernized. So I assume that would probably come into play a bit as well. It's not as unique or as exciting as a Shanghai or somewhere else that's probably got a completely different culture that you've
There's no attraction to that. Yeah, exactly. It's sort of, there's none of that sort of walk outside. With Shanghai, for instance, you can walk out the front door and go, what the fuck's he doing? Or what's going on there? Or what's that weird smell? Or why is he running? Why is he yelling at him or something? Whereas Denmark, you just sort of walk outside and go, well, that's really romantic. That's really beautiful. There's swans on the lake, or there's snow on the ground, or that's a beautiful building. But at the same time, whenever I traveled, I always think that a waterfall or a cave or a mountain was more interesting to me than the local town square or the church or something like that. So Europe was never really interesting to me or never really attracted to me. But the one, landed in Denmark, I thought it was beautiful. And the one holiday we did go on, we went to Amsterdam and Berlin, and I was just blown away how beautiful Amsterdam was. I thought, the canals, the buildings and everything just sort of gave me a taste of how nice it would actually be to go to Europe, So I do have a hankering for it now after that.
Yeah, absolutely. I certainly, I've been there a few times, just various parts of Europe, and I've always got a fascination with the place, and especially given here in Australia, if you're talking about sort of, colonies and when, the English came here and whatnot, that part of history is so small compared to going to Europe and seeing the culture and the history there is just sort of tenfold to what we've got here.
Exactly.
So it's far more interesting, but at the same time, going through Asia and Japan and whatnot, and these places where it's just, as you said, you walk out the door, you don't know what to expect, but at the same time, everyone looks at you and knows that you don't belong here or you don't fit in. Some places, you can go to Singapore and there's that many expats there that you blend in and no one bats an eyelid. But some places, there's hardly any expats around, and you're a foreigner straight away, and you stand out, and whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, you stand out. But I could be in Germany and walking around and everyone just think I'm a German until I open my mouth. And there's this awkward moment where you've got to go, oh, damn it, this person doesn't speak German, or damn it, this person doesn't speak English, and then you have to try and get around it. But whereas you're in Japan or somewhere else, they know straight away that they've got to adjust to try and communicate with you, and vice versa.
Exactly. No, I find that exciting. I find it exciting sort of being dropped in places that, you're just totally out of your comfort zone and totally unfamiliar. And again, even with somewhere like Bali where they're so used to foreigners, some of the best places I found in Bali were tiny little shanty towns where they look at you and go, what are you doing out of Kuta? Or, in the middle of the capital city, they're wondering what you're sort of doing there. And, I loved it.
There's a rush about it where you just don't know what the hell's going to happen, but at the same time, you sort of think that no matter what happens, things will even itself out one way or the other.
Yeah,
and you'll find a way to get through it. And it's kind of it's a bit of a challenge and a bit of a game in a way to try and work out the most creative way to get through a scenario or a problem or a language barrier or some sort of weird cultural rule or something that is just so foreign to you, you don't even understand how it works, but somehow you get through it and you come out the other side okay.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, it's cool.
And it makes you look at your own culture in a different way and then respect another. I mean, I always think, I don't know, I could brag forever and talk about traveling, and I always could say that traveling is just one of the greatest things that anybody can do. You appreciate home a lot more, or, a different concept of what home is about when you're out and about and seeing how other people treat their homes, or you treat, when you walk into their home, not as in home as in physical house, but, where they live and where they're from. And even at the same time, having my wife who'd never been to Australia before and never really been to a Western country before until I brought her here, I have a different outlook of, going around the city when I'm with her than I do by myself. Because I've just sort of seen it through her eyes, and she's the foreigner in my country, and I'm excited to see her and her reactions and trying to show it, my home off to her is awesome. I love it.
It's funny. I mean, it's like anyone really. When you're in one spot or you've got something within arm's reach, you take it for granted. And I mean, we've got all the beaches here, along Sydney and down the south and north coast. And I used to live in Cronulla, and I was literally 5 minutes away from the beach, and I went there once in 12 months. I just didn't even think about doing it. But then that one time I did go was because I had a friend from interstate coming that stopped by for a few days.
Yeah, exactly.
And wanted to go down there, and I'm like, oh, this is actually not bad down here. And not long after that, I actually moved. So it was too late. But it's just taking for granted what you've got at your fingertips. So it is. I mean, definitely envious of you because you've got a wife now that, as you said, you're just introducing what you've always known, but looking at it from a completely different angle. It's just everything's fresh again.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I'm even sitting in my back garden at the moment looking at the hillsides, and I just sort of remember for the first time looking and going, why is there a big clothesline in the middle of the back garden? Why is it taking the whole back garden? I'm like, that's such an Australian thing. Every back garden on this street has got a clothesline like that in the middle of it. Don't you worry. And then sort of, going to her place and seeing what sort of back garden, non-existent yard she grew up in, and, the chaos city that she lived in. And then, her hearing birds in the morning, just goes, it is actually quite beautiful every morning hearing birds, but you don't kind of think about it till you have somebody next to you that has never witnessed that before.
Points it out.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Would you ever consider moving away anywhere again? Like, is there any sort of, have you got short-term plans of being in Sydney just to?
Oh, no, we've got plans to. I'm looking every day because I'm still interested in buying a cafe restaurant somewhere, and I'm still looking somewhere, and if I could put my finger down to a country that I'd be prepared to live in, I'd jump at that. If a job came up anywhere in the world and Joyce was happy to do it, I'd be happy. I'd be more than willing to do it, I've even just sort of jumped on a couple of websites at the moment looking at bars and restaurants in Honduras and on the islands where I lived before to see what's there, and there's a couple of nice ones there, and I was like, oh, I could be very tempted, It's just a different ball game at the moment when you've got, we're waiting for Joyce's visa to be sorted out, and that won't be known until mid this year. So that's our main priority at the moment. But also just, when you've got another person, I won't say she's not adventurous, but she wouldn't be as willing to, I'd be willing to sleep on someone's floor for a couple of months until I found a job, or, I'd just be willing to do whatever needs to be done to get by. And, I'd be happy to fly and land in Mexico, tomorrow and just see if it works, But, so, I've got her considerations now, and, we're thinking of family and all that sort of stuff. So
you've got to do a bit of additional pre-planning.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. There's someone else's thoughts and opinions that matter at the moment. So, yeah.
That's
but
right.
she's really willing. I mean, we're even talking about maybe just, looking at the moment and talking to a guy who's got a cafe up in Mullumbimby, so maybe something like that, living up the north coast. I'm just not happy being in Sydney at the moment. So
fair enough. And like anything, and I mean, you're well versed to it now. Nothing's forever, and it's actually from a positive point of view where you can give something a shot and know that, you know, at any time you can go, I've had enough of that, and it's time to find the next chapter. So you're not
exactly.
people always panic about making a decision and thinking that you know, that decision's do or die, and if it doesn't work out, then everything falls apart. So it's kind of cool that you know, obviously probably you haven't done it consciously over the years, but just putting yourself in those situations where you know everything's sort of temporary, and now being back home, it probably takes a lot of pressure off yourself in a way.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard too at the other side of the spectrum too. You know, I sort of come back to work, and you know, I'm looking at guys I'm working with that are younger than me that have been a lot more committed to their career and so forth like that, earning more money and a bit more stable, and you know, I've bought houses or have family and kids at the moment. And I'm pretty well literally sort of losing at the moment how expensive Sydney is and how hard and tough it is, you know, to get week by week here. And then I sort of look at myself and kind of go, fuck, you know, I'm dedicated to my career a little bit and I didn't do this and that, you know, and I buckled down a little bit. Maybe I wouldn't be struggling so much now and stuff like that. But then again, you know, as I sort of get put in my place quite often is, you know, if you did that, you wouldn't have had all the experiences that you've had, you know, so it sort of falls both ways at the moment, you know. So I'm just trying to reassure myself that what I've been doing over the last 10 years has been a good path to be on, as opposed to, you know, looking at the other guys that have worked that have sort of been with the one company I'm working with for 12 years on, you know, a little bit more money than me, a bit more stable. They've bought themselves an apartment, have an investment up the coast, you know, that kind of thing, and a bit more of a future settled ahead for them, where at the moment I don't really have any plans at all, really. It's just sort of all up in the air, and it's like, fuck, I've got to come up with some sort of plan. I've got to work out what I want to do, and, you know, like it's hard. And you sort of mentioned before about, you know, like being able to just sort of land somewhere and just, you know, drop everything and decide, all right, this is what I'm going to do, and adapt quickly. I think it's more or less, I just change my mind so often. You know, one week I want to move down the South Coast and open a bar. The next week I want to, you know, because we have an office in Brisbane, all right, we'll move to Brisbane and I'll work for the Brisbane office. Another week I'll, you know, so it just depends what week I fall on that I actually do the action is when it happens, you know. And I know it drives Joyce, my wife, crazy, because he's always like, even from weekend plans, it's like, oh, this weekend I thought we'll drive up the coast to look at that cafe. It's like, no, I don't feel like doing that now. Let's go to the beach or do something else. He's like, you've got to stick to your plans a little bit, you know. But it's just hard for me to do that, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess all you can do is try and look at the silver lining of the situation that you're in. I'm sure, like, using the examples of the other guys that you work with who are younger and they've got the stability and they've put some time into like that one path and career and whatnot. I mean, I'm sure if they know about half the things that you've done, they're probably going, oh, geez, you know, I've probably wasted the first 10 years of my working career by staying around home and not doing a great deal. So
I guess always grass is green on the other, as I say. You know, like
that's it. Always.
You know, I had a really interesting boss that I worked for in Copenhagen. He was actually the creator of Aqua and wrote "I'm a Barbie Girl."
Yeah, right.
So he owned the restaurant that I worked for. And I always said to him, oh, man, you know, it's so good. You got so much money and you got, you know, blah, 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 and all this sort of stuff. And he just sort of turned around and went, Nathan, you know, you've got one of the greatest skill sets I know of anyone. You work hard and you're prepared to do whatever needs to get done by, and you've been able to travel the world with it, you know, whereas he's got all the money in the world, just goes out and buys a boat this day and that next day and another restaurant here and another this there and travels wherever he wants. But he doesn't have any freedom. He's tied down to all his businesses. He's got so much locked up. He's so stressed out, you know. So
yeah, it's all perspective, isn't it?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
Really, and it's probably right. I mean, in the end, I mean, you can't take anything with you at the end of the day when your time's up. And
exactly.
I guess if you can sort of look back and get some fulfillment from experiences. I mean, as you said before, you're not much of a materialistic person, so you're always, if you're spending money, it's spending money on experiences and
exactly,
and getting out there. So I mean, that's, I think, probably in the big picture, you probably, your life's going to be a whole range of experiences rather than accumulating things such as property and assets and things like that. I mean, I'm sure you can easily do that as well, but I think, yeah, you'll probably always fall on the experience side of things if you had the choice, which for a lot of people, they'd probably bend over backwards to try and get anything even close to that. So,
I mean,
it's all perspective. I was going to say, because Reese did mention about the aqua thing, and I wasn't going to ask about it because I thought, I'm sure it's been talked about before. But he mentioned that were you friends with the people in aqua themselves, or was it more so just the guy that ran the
guy
place?
the guy that ran the place was the actual sort of creator of it, and the band members would come in every now and then. They were actually, while I was there at the time, begging to do a tour again because they're sort of blown all their money and, you know, that kind of stuff, where he was just sort of, you know, living the easy life. And he obviously, like, as you know, being in the music industry, all the money's made by the manager anyway.
That's it.
Yeah, and you know, as you know, that was sort of one of the first kind of manufactured bands. So none of them that were in the band had any sense of business ideas or anything whatsoever, and basically they just blew all their money. So they were just sort of in all the time, you know, nudge about we, you know, get the band back together and do a tour. And he's like, nah. So no, I didn't know them. I'd only just met them through the restaurant that, you know, I was working at, the bar that I was working at.
Such an odd concept to hear or to have that scenario take place. So,
yeah, it was just random. When I found out about it, I was like, what the? How bizarre, you know? Like, and just the whole bar and everything I worked in was just a really, I mean, with Denmark, it's quite, you know, winter's freezing. It closes at 3 o'clock. You know, it gets dark. 4 o'clock it gets dark. It's snowy. It's horrible. But then when summer comes around, it's like two separate countries. You know, everybody's out in their bikinis lying around the park and everyone goes crazy. You know, the cafes pull tables and chairs out on the streets, and it's just a completely different place. And the restaurant bar I worked at was like on a did you go to where the Little Mermaid? Did you go see that in Copenhagen?
No, I didn't get a chance. No.
Okay, well, it's not worth it. But anyway, it's on the harbour. And basically they made a beach on the harbour. They got truckloads of sand in, and, you know, they made beach volleyball courts and all this sort of stuff. So, you know, hundreds and hundreds of Danish people would come down a day in their bikinis, and I just sort of sat there going, this is so bizarre. Like, this whole concept is just very weird, you know. So, yeah, it was a good bar, a good place to work at, and, you know, interesting. It was a great bunch of people to actually meet because the other owner was in the art scene and quite a contemporary art collector and blah, blah, blah. So I got to meet some really interesting people through working in that restaurant, you know. It was really good.
So it's a bit of a hub for sort of eclectic people.
Yeah,
people
exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah,
that's cool.
You know, and the owners were really nice. You know, used to hang out with them and got a lot of other work through other people through them, and yeah, it's good.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. I'm just keeping you on the time, so I don't want to take up too much of your time. But I've got a few quick questions, and they're based off what Reese has fed me. So I thought you can give quick answers if you want to. But do you want to tell me about apparently you had a motorbike crash not too long ago?
Yeah, that's how I sort of ended up in Shanghai. I had a motorbike accident and I had to head on with a car about 7 odd years ago and broke all my knee and shattered my knee, and I couldn't work. And then when I got better, I sort of was on the internet and found, you know, looking for AV jobs, and there was just a little click in the top right-hand corner that sort of said AV work overseas, and I clicked on that, and yeah, I had to have the interview. That was a Wednesday. I had to have the resume in by a Friday, had the interview the Wednesday after in Sydney, flew down to Melbourne, and the week after that I was in Shanghai. So from the day that I saw the ad to when I was in Shanghai, it was like 3.5 weeks.
So in a way, if you weren't involved in that motorbike accident, you wouldn't have been in China. Wow.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, something good coming out of the bad kind of thing, you know.
Oh, incredible. Another thing, you used to organise a lot of raves in Sydney. Apparently, you organised one on the Harbour Bridge that you had to close off the bridge.
No, not the bridge, before the bridge. Have you heard of Reclaim the Street?
Oh, I've heard of.
Yeah, I used to be heavily involved with Reclaim the Street and that sort of underground movement and so forth. And we did like, I don't know if you know Sydney at all, but we blocked off. I was probably the only person that managed to not block off personally myself, but managed to DJ in the middle of George Street in front of Town Hall, you know, with 5,000 people around kind of thing, blocking the street off on George Street, yeah.
What is it almost like this is probably a really poor way of describing it, but almost like a flash mobs type thing where you're just doing it at the last minute, like, or do you actually go through the licensing and whatever to organise it?
It started off basically around in the Newtown area where the crews that I was sort of friends with and involved with, and so I sort of got involved with it because I was more involved in DJing and involved in the underground scene. And there's a group of guys that would just literally on a scaffold, put a sound system on a scaffold, hide it behind a shop, and then at some point on a certain day that was organised, and there's all meetings involved and stuff, and there's meetings involved about, okay, you're going to block that street off, and we're going to detour the traffic around this way and all that sort of stuff. So it's not just literally walk out in the middle of the street and block everybody off. It was all sort of planned and how to reroute the traffic. And, so it got to that point where they were just sort of pulling a scaffold, a mobile sound system out in the middle of the street and blocking the crew off, to the point where the police got involved. And for something like the George Street one, the police were involved. We didn't get licensed or anything, but they were warned that, hey, we're going to have so many thousands of people, you can either try and stop us, or you can, try and do the right thing. So they would end up, stopping traffic in front of us and all that sort of stuff until we got to locations, and we wouldn't tell them where we're going to stop and, where we're going to go. We'd just be literally like, all right, we want to go up and down George Street around here and back around there. And then they would just sort of try and coordinate the traffic ahead of us.
So you're on the back of a truck or something like that?
This one was like a big mobile bug that was all welded up. So I was like in the centre of a big bug that was sort of being pushed around the street. But I've probably done like about a dozen of them, and some of them were they'd block a street off and there'd be a whole lot of sort of mobile, I wouldn't say mobile, like sort of set up little sound systems up and down the street, up to like 12 sound systems. To some of them were just sort of big mobile, back of a truck systems, where it was just one big sound system with a big sort of mob or protest or crew hanging behind it, walking behind and dancing, and then we'd sort of stop in an area, and that would be our end point kind of thing, and that would sort of go till, all hours of the night.
It just sounds like absolute chaos.
Yeah, it was just wonderful. Like it was great. And in some of the instances you'd get a lot of angry, people in cars and stuff being held up, but a lot of the time the general public were quite aware of, and quite up for what was going on. It was good. It was refreshing. It was nice. Yeah. And, and this is sort of, late 90s, early 2000s. So the whole techno dance thing was still kind of quite fresh and kind of quite new for Sydney. And to be out in a public street with a whole bunch of ferals with dreadlocks and all that sort of stuff was quite entertaining for a lot of the public,
Absolutely. And I'm sure that it would have been a lot easier to get away with certain things as opposed to trying to attempt the same things now.
Oh, totally. I'd hate to be a teenager in Sydney nowadays. It'd be horrible, Some of the things we used to do when we were younger, and just some of the nights we used to have, and some of the events and some of the spaces that we did were amazing.
Yeah, incredible. Okay, next question. I'm just keeping an eye on the time. You got detained in Mexico?
Sort of, no, not really detained. Kind of. When you're going to Mexico, you're supposed to get like a tourist pass, basically.
Okay.
So they fill it in, blah, 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 but it's a big thing apparently for the immigration to not hand them to you and then resell them off.
No. Okay.
And so I didn't know about it, so no one handed me one. But when I went to go to the border and across to the border in Guatemala, they wouldn't let me through to Guatemala, but I was with a mate, a friend of mine. We bought a car and drove around Mexico and Guatemala, and he wanted to go through, so I let him go through, and I had to go back to the local police station to try and talk my way into getting this pass. And it just ended up being quite a story, and kind of got a bit out of hand, but kind of became it was quite funny. But I wasn't physically detained in jail. I was just sort of got put in a police cell waiting to be taken to the head of police, and then I got driven out into the middle of the desert in the back of a ute with a bunch of Mexican policemen with machine guns driving out in the middle of nowhere, and we ended up in this sort of, you can almost say it looked like a big, I don't know, jail or castle in the middle of the desert, something out of like Dusk Till Dawn kind of thing, and pulled up to big steel gates that have been rolled up and big timber doors being opened, driven into the inside of it, and then taken upstairs to the head of police, and it sort of got blown out of proportion. I got yelled at and carried on, and people screaming, and I couldn't handle it. I couldn't speak any Spanish at the time, and I was quite lucky. In the room next to me there was an official from the Mexican Navy who could speak very good English, and he actually had a bit of rank, and he came in and helped me and got me out of the situation and explained everything. And it was quite scary, but it ended up being like a 2-day big adventure. It was quite cool, quite scary at the time, but quite, it started off with me hitchhiking, getting picked up in like a low rider with, a bunch of Mexican dudes with the sombreros and, the sexy chicas in the back and the Mexican music blaring out the speakers, and me driving through Mexico just going, this is awesome, it's so cliche. for me getting yelled at by, the head of police in Mexico in the middle of the desert, just going, nobody knows I'm here right now, and I'm in the back of a ute with 4 or 5 policemen with machine guns.
Was there ever a point where you're actually going like, this is not going well? Like, I'm not. I mean, of course, it doesn't.
Totally. When I sat in the police station before I went in there, I was sitting in this police station. There was a whole bunch of guys. I'm just on a white bench, and there was sort of guys. I didn't even know who they were. And I later found out they were the police because I was just sitting in plain clothes, but they're sitting next to me. And it's quite common when you're in Mexico just to see people riding around on motorbikes with machine guns. Or when you go to Mexico, there'll be 2 security guards out the front of McDonald's, or even a shoe shop with a shotgun. So guns you kind of get used to seeing. But I was sitting in the police cell, and guy sitting next to me with machine guns going, do you want to look at my machine gun? I'm not fucking touching your machine gun in the middle of a police station. Fuck off. There's no way I'm touching that, let alone holding it and looking at it. As soon as I touch that, I'm going to... And at that point, I was like, I'm in trouble here. And then they all sort of yelled at me, all right, head of police. And I'm like, okay, we must be going around the corner. So I jumped in the back of the police station wagon. As soon as we started driving, 30 minutes later, I'm like, I have no fucking idea where I'm going, and nobody knows that I'm even here.
Wow.
So it was really scary. And then when we pulled up to out to the desert and then saw in the distance, a sandstone kind of castle / jail, whatever it is, I was freaking out quite a bit. But at the same time going, this is fucking cool.
This will make a great story if I can just get out of this alive.
Yeah, basically.
It sounds like one of those shows that you see on I don't know, like the Discovery Channel or something like that, where it's like the tales of foreigners getting stuck in a country getting locked up in jail.
Yeah. And it's quite cool because we met a Canadian guy who was travelling with us, and he was going to come meet us in Guatemala afterwards, and he was actually in the city, so I went out to got in trouble, came back to the main city, and I managed just to bump into him in a bar. I'm like, Bob, you wouldn't just fucking believe what happened to me. And he's like, that's awesome. Let's get drunk and we'll go to Guatemala together tomorrow. And then we ended up going to Guatemala and, living on the lake for a couple of weeks. It was awesome.
Wow. Yeah. Incredible. All right, last question before I wrap it up.
Yeah.
I know that you were sort of on the side when you're working in Shanghai. You're also, I think this is how you sort of, I think you met Reese, but sort of involved sort of casually with sort of the local music scene in Shanghai?
Yes, that is how I met Reese. One of his CD launches, he had an ad or a little blurb at the bottom of one of his ads, if you want to help out, give me an email. I just sent him an email, and that's how I met him, helping him on one of his CD releases.
That's cool. So the question I've got is, what are the main differences between Chinese musicians and Australian musicians?
Australian or Western in general? Musicians in themselves, as in technically, or just how they present themselves, personality? Just
more so just the way that they handle themselves. But I mean, the technicality side of things probably not so much.
Just, I guess, the Chinese, I guess in general, I guess it sort of just stems from them and their personality, is that they don't seem to take it as fun as the Westerners do. Like the Westerners just do it and get up there and play, whether they make it or not. It doesn't matter. They can play an instrument. Let's let's get together and let's play, and why not? We make something out of it. Doesn't matter. Whereas the Chinese, I think, whether they think that they don't know how to go about it, that once you play half a dozen gigs, we should be big by now. We should be playing, first, the best slot of the night and that sort of stuff. And you can just see that they don't get into it and have as much fun on stage as the Westerners do. They take it quite serious, and it's all about the technicality. And if they fuck up at the end of it, you see them talk to one another and discuss how we can do this better next time, and this and that. And it's just not fun for them. It almost seems like not a job for them, and it almost seems like they're in it to get somewhere with it.
Yeah,
and
it sounds like a lot of Western metal bands, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost true. Yeah, it's almost true. Yeah, and I mean, I used to do a night there monthly. I did a couple of nights with Reese as well, but I used to do a night monthly. And one of the things was I couldn't pay them that great because the door charge. So one of the things I'd do is I'd sort of shout them dinner. We used to have a nice Chinese restaurant above the bar that I do, so I'd shout everybody dinner. And if I had a night on with sort of 3 Chinese bands, they'd all just sit there in silence. And I'm like, dudes, talk. Like, you're all in bands, you all know each other, you're all just have fun, talk, talk about this or that. I'd take 3 Western bands up there and there'd be drinks going around and people talking and having fun, and they're like, whatever, you play. It doesn't matter if you make a mistake. Who cares? Let's go out and have a good night. Whereas the Chinese are like, oh, guys, let's get out there. We've got to get that song that we mucked up, And
right.
I don't know. It's really hard, but I guess it all just stems from their personality, from having to study hard, and they're just an awkward group of people to socialise. In general, And the only Chinese musicians that I ever saw having fun on stage were generally the ones that would hang out with Westerners a lot. And I'm not trying to say the big note either us, but they just generally were a lot looser and happy to be on stage and jump around and, get fun and have a beer beside them on the guitar amp and drink it and, talk to the crowd and, hang around and watch the band afterwards and, make a night of it.
Yeah. And I guess, if they're either playing with Westerners or they're hanging out with a lot of Westerners, they probably don't feel like they're getting judged so much by their local friends or acquaintances or things like that, because from a Western point of view, most of us really don't care. The care factor's
exactly
pretty low. Exactly. So I guess that the guard can come down a bit.
Yeah, exactly. I mean that's everything with the Chinese society. There's a lot of don't show face. You always got to keep your head down and get on with your day and do what you got to do. Don't try and step out of line in any way, form, Wake up, go to work in the morning, do your job, come home, don't complain about it, just get it done, and then, go to school, come home, do study, make the best results you can. Nothing about getting out there and seeing the world and socialising, all right, leave high school, meet a girl, get married, have 2 children. Nothing about travelling or getting to know each other first, or, meeting a few women until you find the right one, or just having fun, or it was all just about, it's just very regimented almost.
It's very, very robotic in a way.
Yeah.
Incredible. All right, man. Well, I'm going to wrap it up now, but I'm very curious to see what the next sort of 12 to 18 months are in store for you, especially if you happen to come across the right website with the right details of what's going on overseas.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, well, so do I.
All right, take care, man. Thanks, everyone. Hope you enjoyed the podcast with Nath. I'll have some links in the show notes if you want to check out a little bit more with what Nath's done over the years. I'll get some info from him to chuck up on the website. And if you want to reach out to him, there'll be some details there as well. But a massive thanks to Nath for helping out and also the recommendation. And a big shout out to a number of people that have been recommending me. Lots of interesting people, random people that I don't know, I've never heard of, but have some amazing stories. And this is the whole point of this podcast, is to try and get out of my comfort zone a bit and talk to different people and learn more and more. So thank you so much for those people that are taking the time to make contact. And I encourage everybody to throw some suggestions my way of who you think might be someone interesting. And I'm not always looking for the big names or the most obvious of people. If you know somebody in your day-to-day happenings, there might be somebody that has a really cool story or an experience that they've been through, something interesting, or something that an interesting lesson that should be learned by more people, or whatever it might be. But I'm all ears and always open to suggestions. If you want to find me on the internet, andysocial.net is the best place to start, but you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr, YouTube. Just search for Andy Dowling and you will find me there, or you can search for Andy Social Podcast and you will find me very easily. If you want to share this episode or a number of other episodes around, the best way to do that is via YouTube. Most people are familiar with YouTube, and it's very easy to share these episodes around. So that's the best way of doing that, and it definitely helps the podcast as well. That's enough for this week. Heaps of episodes coming up. I've got a few in the bank. I have a couple of really cool ones coming up. One that's a very, very left field. I'm hoping, I haven't actually recorded it, and I keep mentioning this. I've mentioned, I think, the last episode as well. I've got to stop jinxing myself. But yeah, hopefully you guys will get a pleasant surprise when you see who this person will be. But lots of cool stuff, doing a bit of traveling coming up as well. I'll be in Adelaide the first weekend of February, I should say. And if you've got any suggestions of people that I should speak to in Adelaide in February, yes, I am dying here in this heat, please contact me. Let me know, because I do have a couple little windows of opportunity between the other guests that I'll be talking to, and I'm always looking for somebody different, especially somebody that's outside of the music industry, just for a different perspective and something new to learn. So all ears, let me know. All right, guys, until next week, thank you so much. Keep spreading the word, keep liking and commenting and doing all those little things on social media. It all helps. And we'll speak soon. Thanks, guys.
You're ready.